Montana Territory, 1874. The sun hung like a copper coin over the horizon, bleeding red light across the dusty main street of Willow Creek. Nathan Nichols sat atop his buckskin gelding, scanning the collection of weathered buildings with cautious eyes. At 25, he had the lean, hard-muscled build of a man accustomed to life in the saddle, with a straight jawline that women admired and men respected. A light stubble had begun to form after days on the trail, but he remained dashingly handsome despite the trail dust. Another town, another night, he murmured to himself, adjusting his Stetson. Remember, Nate. Keep moving. Stay alive. The mantra had served him well for 3 years. Since watching his family's homestead burn at the hands of land-hungry cattle barons, Nathan had lived by one simple truth. Attachment meant vulnerability, and in the untamed West, vulnerability got you killed. Love was a luxury meant for city folk back east, not for men trying to survive the harsh realities of frontier life. He guided his horse toward the hitching post outside the town's only hotel, a 2-story wooden structure with peeling paint and crooked shutters. All he wanted was a hot meal, a bath to wash away the trail grime, and a bed that wasn't the hard Montana ground. Come morning, he'd be gone, just as he always was. The saloon across the street erupted with laughter and piano music. Nathan glanced that way, noting the establishment's weathered sign, the Jackrabbit. Beneath it stood a young woman in a modest blue dress that brought out her eyes. At perhaps 20 years old, with flowing honey-blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, she was striking in her natural beauty. No painted-up saloon girl, this one. She stood with quiet dignity, seemingly out of place amid the rowdy frontier town. Their eyes met briefly across the dusty street, and something unfamiliar stirred in Nathan's chest. He quickly looked away. Attachment was dangerous. Tomorrow, he would ride out, as always. He had nearly finished unsaddling his horse when shouting erupted from the saloon. 3 rough-looking men surrounded the blonde woman. One grabbed her arm, his intentions clear even from a distance. "Let me go," her voice carried clearly across the street. "I said I'm not interested." Nathan's hand instinctively moved to his holster. This wasn't his business. Getting involved meant potential trouble, and trouble meant staying longer in one place than was safe. "You don't have to be a hero," he whispered to himself. "Not your fight, not your town." But when the largest man roughly pulled the woman toward an alley, Nathan found himself striding across the street before he could reconsider. "The lady said no," Nathan stated firmly, hand resting on his holster. "Mind your business, stranger," growled the man, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey. "I'm making it my business," Nathan replied evenly. What followed was brief but decisive. 2 minutes later, the 3 men lay groaning in the dust, and Nathan stood unscathed, his reputation as a fast draw now firmly established in Willow Creek. The woman smoothed her dress, seemingly more annoyed than frightened by the ordeal. "I didn't need rescuing," she said, though her eyes betrayed gratitude. "But thank you nonetheless. I'm Olivia Newell." "Nathan Nichols," he replied, tipping his hat. "Just passing through." "Everyone's just passing through Willow Creek," she said with a sad smile. "No one ever stays." Something in her voice caught him, a loneliness that echoed his own. For the first time in years, Nathan felt the walls around his heart crack ever so slightly. "Miss Newell, may I escort you home? These streets don't seem entirely safe for a lady alone." She studied his face, as if searching for hidden motives, then nodded. "That would be appreciated, Mr. Nichols." As they walked through the darkening streets, Nathan learned that Olivia worked as the town's schoolteacher, having arrived from Boston just 6 months earlier. Her dream of bringing education to frontier children had led her to this remote outpost. "Teaching brings purpose," she explained, "even in a place as rough as this." At her modest cabin on the edge of town, she paused at the door. "Would you like to come in for coffee, Mr. Nichols? As thanks for your assistance." Every instinct warned Nathan to decline, to maintain the distance that had kept him alive. But something about Olivia Newell, her quiet strength, her determination to create something meaningful in this harsh land, drew him in a way he couldn't explain. "Just 1 cup," he said, knowing even as the words left his mouth that he was breaking his own rules. 1 cup became 2, and conversation flowed easier than it had with anyone in years. Nathan found himself revealing pieces of his past. Careful omissions were necessary, but more truth than he'd spoken aloud since his family's death. And you've been wandering ever since? Olivia asked, her blue eyes soft with compassion rather than pity. The West isn't kind to those who stay still too long, he replied. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully, but neither is it kind to those who never put down roots. Tumbleweeds may survive, Mr. Nichols, but they never truly live. Her words followed him back to the hotel, echoing in his mind as he stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, he would ride out. That was the plan. Always the plan. But the next morning found him fixing Olivia's leaking roof, a task he'd somehow volunteered for when learning she had no one to help with such repairs. And that evening, he found himself at her table again, sharing a simple but delicious meal. You're still here, she observed with a smile that brightened her entire face. Just for another day, he insisted. The roof needs finishing. Days stretched into a week. Nathan told himself it was just the odd jobs around town, the chance to rest his horse, the surprising comfort of having regular meals and conversations. But in truth, it was Olivia, her gentle wisdom, her stubborn optimism, her ability to see beauty in a harsh landscape where he had long seen only danger. On Sunday, he accompanied her to the small church, feeling conspicuously out of place among the townsfolk. Afterward, they walked along the creek that gave the town its name. Why did you really come west, Olivia? He asked, noticing how sunlight caught in her golden hair. She was quiet for a long moment. I was engaged, back in Boston, to a banker's son. Everything was arranged, proper, secure. Her fingers idly twisted a strand of hair. And suffocating. I felt like a bird in a gilded cage, admired but not truly seen. So you flew away to the wildest place you could find? Nathan couldn't hide his smile. I chose freedom, she said simply, even with all its dangers and difficulties. Nathan understood then what had drawn him to her. They were both refugees from different cages, seeking something genuine in a place most considered godforsaken. That night, as a storm rolled across the plains, Nathan sat in his hotel room and made a decision. Tomorrow, he would ride out. Not because it was his pattern, but because staying close to Olivia Newell was dangerous. Not to his physical safety, but to the walls he'd built around his heart. Morning brought unexpected chaos. A telegram had arrived for the sheriff. The Blackwater gang was heading toward Willow Creek. 3 notorious brothers whose brutality had become legendary throughout the territory. The same men who had burned Nathan's family home 3 years before. Nathan's first instinct was to ride out immediately, in the opposite direction. The Blackwaters had never seen his face, but he had seen theirs, and vengeance was a luxury he couldn't afford. Survival meant avoiding such conflicts. But as he packed his saddlebags, Olivia burst into the hotel lobby. Nathan, the school, they've taken the children. The Blackwater brothers had seized the schoolhouse with 8 children inside, demanding food, supplies, and horses before they would release them. The town's sheriff, an aging man with a trembling hand, looked overwhelmed by the situation. Please, Olivia begged, her blue eyes swimming with tears. They're just children. Every instinct screamed for Nathan to leave. This wasn't his fight. These weren't his people. Attachment meant vulnerability, and vulnerability got you killed. But looking into Olivia's desperate face, he realized with startling clarity that he was already attached. Somewhere between fixing her roof and walking along the willow-lined creek, Olivia Newell had carved a place in his heart that he couldn't simply ride away from. Give me the building layout, he told the sheriff, and find me anyone in town who can shoot straight. The standoff lasted hours. Nathan organized the townspeople with a natural authority that surprised even himself. When negotiations failed, he led a carefully orchestrated rescue, using his intimate knowledge of the Blackwaters' tactics to anticipate their moves. In the chaos, Nathan came face to face with Abel Blackwater, the eldest brother who had given the order that destroyed Nathan's family. Recognition dawned in the outlaw's eyes. You're that Nichols boy, Abel snarled. Should have made sure we got you too. Their gunfight was brief but vicious. Nathan took a bullet to his left shoulder before putting Abel down permanently. The other brothers surrendered when they realized their leader had fallen. As the town doctor removed the bullet from his shoulder, Nathan looked up to find Olivia watching him with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. You knew them, she said quietly after the doctor left. This wasn't just about the children. Nathan couldn't lie to her. They killed my family. Burned our ranch. I've been running from their shadow for 3 years. And now I don't know, he admitted. Everything I believed about staying alive out here, about not getting attached, not making connections, it all falls apart when I look at you. Olivia took his hand, her touch gentle but firm. Perhaps those beliefs were wrong to begin with. The following weeks brought healing, for Nathan's shoulder and, slowly, for his heart. The town regarded him as a hero, and the sheriff, recognizing his own limitations, offered Nathan a deputy's badge. For the first time since losing his family, Nathan considered putting down roots. But as summer turned to fall, a letter arrived for Olivia. Her father had fallen gravely ill in Boston. She needed to return east immediately. The night before her departure, they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in impossible colors. "Come with me," she said suddenly, turning to face him. "To Boston." Nathan stared at her, speechless. "Olivia, I can't. I'm not made for city life. Everything I know is out here." "What you know is how to run," she said softly, but the words stung with truth. "This badge, this town, they're just another temporary stop for you, aren't they? You're still afraid to truly belong somewhere." "That's not fair," he protested, though part of him wondered if she was right. "When I return, if I return, I need to know if there's something real waiting for me here." Her blue eyes searched his face. "You don't have to love me, Nathan. I'm not asking for that. Just be honest about whether you can ever truly stop running." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Nathan wanted to reassure her, to promise he would be waiting, but the thought of committing to one place, to one person, after years of deliberate detachment terrified him more than any gunfight. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I just don't know." The stagecoach departed at dawn. Nathan watched it disappear into the eastern horizon, feeling as though a vital piece of himself was rolling away with it. Weeks passed. Nathan threw himself into his duties as deputy, cleaning up the town with methodical efficiency. But each night, he returned to an empty hotel room, staring at the ceiling and wondering where Olivia was, if she was safe, if she would return. When the first snow fell, Nathan realized with startling clarity that he was waiting for her. Despite every instinct that had kept him alive for years, he was staying in one place, hoping for her return. The revelation was both terrifying and liberating. As winter tightened its grip on Willow Creek, Nathan made a decision. He purchased the abandoned cabin on the edge of town, the one with the view of the mountains that Olivia had once admired. Day by day, he restored it, adding a second bedroom, reinforcing the walls against winter storms, building bookshelves for a woman who loved literature. The townspeople watched with knowing smiles, but asked no questions. By February, when the snow lay deep across the valley, the cabin stood ready, though Nathan continued to sleep at the hotel. The empty house felt too much like a question without an answer. March brought the first thaw, and with it, unexpected visitors. A group of wealthy cattle barons, the same type who had driven Nathan's family from their land years before, arrived with documents claiming water rights to Willow Creek itself. Without access to the creek, the small farms and ranches surrounding the town would wither and die. The cattle barons had hired guns and legal papers. The town had Nathan, a handful of determined farmers, and justice on their side. What followed was a battle fought not just with guns, but with legal challenges, community solidarity, and strategic thinking that Nathan had never known himself capable of. In the midst of this struggle, as April painted the hills with wildflowers, the stagecoach arrived from the east. Nathan was in the sheriff's office, poring over water rights documents, when the door opened. Olivia stood there, thinner than he remembered, her blonde hair styled more formally, but her blue eyes just as vibrant. For a moment, neither spoke. "You're still here," she finally said, an echo of words from months before. "I'm still here," he confirmed, heart pounding. "How is your father?" "He passed," she said quietly. 2 months ago. I stayed to settle his affairs." "I'm sorry, Olivia." She nodded, accepting his condolence. "The town seems different." "We're fighting for it," Nathan explained. "For the water rights. For the future." Her eyes widened slightly at the word "we," noting his inclusion of himself among the townspeople. Something passed between them, a recognition of change. "I should get settled," she said after a moment. "My old cabin has new tenants," Nathan interrupted. "The Millers moved in after their farm burned." Oh, disappointment flickered across her face. The hotel, then. Or, Nathan said carefully, there's another option. He led her to the cabin he'd restored, watching her face as she took in each detail. The blue curtains that matched her eyes, the extensive bookshelves, the rocking chair on the porch positioned perfectly to watch the sunset over the mountains. You built this, she whispered, running her fingers along the smooth wooden mantel. For me. For us, Nathan corrected, then hesitated. If you want there to be an us. Olivia turned to him, eyes searching his face. The last time we spoke, you couldn't promise anything. What changed? Everything, Nathan admitted. You were right about me. I was still running, even when standing still. But these past months, fighting for this town, putting down roots, I realized that what kept me alive all those years on the run was also keeping me from truly living. He took her hands in his. I thought avoiding attachment was strength. But real strength is risking your heart for something that matters. And you matter, Olivia. This town matters. Having a home matters. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You don't have to love me, she said, echoing her words from months before. I just needed to know you could stop running. Nathan brushed away her tears with his thumb. Too late, he whispered back. I already love you. I think I have since that first day, when you told me off for rescuing you. Their kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with months of separation and longing. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Welcome home, Nathan said softly. The battle for Willow Creek's water rights lasted through summer, but the town prevailed through unity and determination. By autumn, Nathan and Olivia were married in the small church where they had first walked together nearly a year before. As they stood on the porch of their cabin that evening, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold and crimson, Nathan wrapped his arms around his wife. Do you ever miss Boston? He asked, resting his chin on her head. Not even a little, she replied, leaning into his embrace. This is where I belong. Nathan looked out over the town that had become his home, at the creek that had been worth fighting for, and at the remarkable woman who had taught him that the heart grew stronger through connection, not isolation. This is where we both belong, he agreed. The West remained wild and dangerous, full of challenges that would test their resolve in the years to come. But Nathan no longer faced it alone, running from attachment. Instead, he faced it with roots planted firmly in the soil of Willow Creek, with Olivia by his side, and with the knowledge that in this harsh frontier, love wasn't a vulnerability. It was the greatest strength of all.